Right now, it's down to the business end. The Australian Touring Car Championship for season 1989. We're ready to go racing between Johnson and Brock on the front row. Off and running. Brock gets away smartly. Johnson tries to catch a gear, and splitting them is John Bower, who starts out of the second row and leads them up the hill for the first time. Brock tries to go with him. Johnson is blowing it as they head up to the top of the hill. Now starts to gather them back in again. That was a brilliant start from Bower. Puts Brock into second. Johnson back to third. Also up very smartly indeed was George Fury. And starting out and around them at this stage is Alan Moffat. The Dulux Autocolor race camera, Glenn Seaton sitting behind Tony Longhurst as they work the back straight for the first time. But here is the field coming down to Honda Corner. John Bower, a brilliant start in the second of the Shell Sierras. There's Johnson and Peter Brock getting into a bit of car wars. And starting with the number 2, Jim Richards is up with them in the Nissan as they head down to the right-hander at the lake.
Stewards might want to look at the instant replay of the start. I think might be just a photo finish there of whether or not John Bower might have jumped the start.
There's Brock going through. He's back to third. Richards is closing on him. Tony Longhurst is there, and Longhurst now makes the run up on the inside of Jimmy Richards. Gains one more spot. Up to tailgate Peter Brock at the top of Skyline. So the order is John Bower, Dick Johnson. Back behind them, of course, Peter Brock, Tony Longhurst, then Jim Richards in the Nissan car number 2. And behind them, Glenn Seaton, and then Colin Bond in the Caltech CXT. One already out, car number 38, Tony Mulverhill. That's bad luck in the pits already. His race is well and truly gone. They've been having problems with the car trying to make the start, came out, but they're now back into the pit area again. The race continues as we pick them up coming along the short chute before a big crowd here at Amaroo Park today, and across the line. Bower leads a teammate, Dick Johnson, in second, opening a bit of a gap over Brock. Next is Longhurst, followed by Richard Seaton as the next one, then Colin Bond in the Caltex Cosworth.
Well, Dick Johnson's made no secret about how the Shell team are going to run the championship this year. He said exactly like 1988, he and Bower, it's their intention to get out in front and grind everybody else into the dirt. That's the way it's happening right now, except that it's Bower in front, not Dick.
Well, Brock still sits back there in third spot. As you said earlier, Gary, you thought there may have been a move from Bower before the start. Let's have a look at this in our replay for you. They're all at the start. Yes, well,
it's
it was
pretty
marginal.
close.
It was marginal. But what a split, though, when he went between them to take the lead away. Fantastic start there from John Bower. In the meantime, we're back looking at Peter Brock in 05, the Mobile Sierra. And Tony Longhurst in the Benson and Hedges car, right behind him.
Several good judges are giving John Bower the benefit of good reflexes.
Now Longhurst starts up the inside here of Peter Brock as they come across the top of the hill. Yes, and Longhurst gains one more spot.
It's been quite a drive, hasn't it, by Longhurst, when you think about it, the first 2.5 laps of this race.
Sure has, and just notice how close that Jim Richards is staying to these two Sierras.
And Richards this morning was so confident that he'll be able to run like this all day without too much trouble. He's given Brock the go by.
Well, the man who employed him last year. So Jim in car number 2, the Nissan Skyline GTSR Turbo, sits in behind Tony Longhurst. Brock dropping back through the field. And gaining on him is Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson entry, followed by Colin Bond. That's the order as they go up Bitchapave Hill yet again in this opening round. 1 hour race, the Australian Touring Car Championship. What a full book Jim Richards has for season 89 with touring car commitments and also Oscar Racing in a Ford, and also his NASCAR book also full, so he's a busy boy. Jimmy Richards, 41 years of age, from Melbourne. Nissan driver for this year. First in the 85 and 87 Touring Car Championship at Bathurst. Co-winner in 78, 79 and 80. Debut drive for Nissan today, and 4th Amaroo last year in the touring car round. There's Dickie Johnson, 17, closing on his teammate John Bower. They list themselves as equal number ones in the Shell Sierra team. The
lead car driven by John Bower, Mike, in fact, is Dick Johnson's Bathurst car from last October. A car that he drove with such success in '88. And, of course, the 17 car that he's behind the wheel of now is brand new.
The one that he refers to as the Eggenberger eater.
Well, the two Shell Sierras head down to Lake Corner, the right-hander. Dick closing on teammate John. Third place still being held by Tony Long. Jim Richards runs in fourth place. Peter Brock in 05 is 5. Then Colin Bond. Next is George Fury, followed by Glenn Seaton. And then a toss-up, but I would think it's probably Kenny Matthews in the second of the Caltech Sierras. So Johnson, all the time closes on his teammate. You'll recall last year in the Touring Car Championship, the fun-filled race that we had with Dick getting to the front, and then all of a sudden problems, and then John Bower went through to take over the lead. And Dick came back through the field. Everyone expected John to stop, let him pass, but he didn't.
Well, they've built themselves some insurance here. The two boys from the Shell team opened up a gap. They're running a comfortable first and second. They're not racing each other, much as the impression may be at the moment. They'll be content to set the pace in front, as long as they can stay well clear of the opposition. And I don't think that Johnson would, in fact, make any overt move to take the lead away from Bower at this stage.
Johnson running Bower awfully close there, looking as if this might possibly be the lap that he looks for away past his teammate.
The Lake Corner yet again. John Bower from Tasmania.
Back in the pack, veteran Murray Carter, who came off 18th position on the grid, has struck trouble early in his new Sierra RS 500. This is a little RS and is in the pits, in fact.
Everything running smoothly for the Shell team as they exit Dunlop Loop, come down the back straight. Down through Mazda Corner on the way to the left-hander at Honda. Getting, and we'll pick this up for you shortly, the battle for second place as Jim Richards is all over Tony Longhurst like a wet blanket. And in fact, making a very determined bid. The two of them are racing side by side. We'll pick that up for you. They've been at that for a couple of laps. So Bower leads along the short straight. Johnson runs in second place. And in fact, it's Jim Richards who now moves through into third place behind this group. So Richards in the Nissan doing one heck of a job. Longhurst now drops back to fourth. Fifth place is then held by Brock, followed by George Fury.
And Andrew Madecki is in sixth place, having come off 26th position on the grid.
It's a sensational performance from Andrew Madecki in the Kenwood entry. Here they are coming down the straight, down the short straight. We'll pick them up for you on the Caltex race score. John Bower is your race leader from Dick Johnson. Jimmy Richards runs in third. Tony Longhurst is fourth. And Peter Brock runs in fifth.
13 laps into round one of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship, riding with Glenn Seaton through the right-hander. Oh, he's come out of there looking out of shape. Colin Bond right behind him. I think he's gone up and just touched the wall. We look on ICO Dulux Auto Colour race cam, and certainly Seaton lost a lot of ground that time. And there's Jim Richards, the real mover in the pack. But Cito, for a little bit of bad luck there, has picked up an award today, Wilco.
Well, they might take it back off him now. It was for Dulux Auto Colour Award for the best presented car. It wouldn't fit the category any longer, would it?
No, nice scrape down that wall. It's a beautifully engineered presented car. But the shaker in the pack at the moment is certainly Jim Richards, car number 2. It's the Rita Awadallah Holden Commodore, Blue Haven's Pools entry.
Former sports sedan competitor here at Amaroo Park, having a go at the big time. fielding a two-car team. Gary Wilmington driving the other entry. As we come back on Jim Richards, closing rapidly on the two Shell teams, the two Shell cars rather, at the head of affairs here this afternoon.
There they are, and Richards certainly closing that gap at the moment. They've done about 800 kilometres of testing with their old vehicles. That's last year's cars with the Nissan team. And Peter Brock, incidentally, in trouble. He's been dropping back through the field. And Fred Gibson is very, very happy that the cars are now ultra reliable. This is a brand new car, didn't turn a wheel before last Thursday here at Amaroo Park. It's 70 kilos lighter than the Nissans we saw last year, so it's built right down to its minimum weight for the class, which is 1,100 kilograms. There's Brock. Exit 1 turbo.
So Brocky heads into the pits after dropping back through the field. There he is coming down pit lane.
Leaving Brad Jones, who's been coming up from the back of the field after some problems yesterday. And he would be inside the top 10 at the moment, I think.
Well, Brock goes to the pits. Crew at leisure. Not much they can do if he has blown a turbo. In the meantime, we've been following a couple of drivers coming through the field. Brad Jones is one, and Andrew Medecky in the Kenwood Sierra is another, who started, as we mentioned earlier, out of position number 26, and has really been hounding them.
I really think this performance by the Nissan team is noteworthy, Mike. It's been a tremendous performance. George Fury can't believe the transformation in the car compared to the car that he drove last year. And I've never seen Fred or his team more determined than they are to succeed this year. And they've quietly worked away at the job. There we look at the heartbeat of 05 Mobile Ford. And it's not beating too well at the moment.
No.
Allied team manager in discussion with Brock. And there's Andrew Medecky with newfound backing in 1989, Kenwood Hi-Fi and Yokohama Rubber. A launch in Sydney Siebel Townhouse a couple of weeks ago, and has now moved his entire facility to Queensland. He's got 9 full-time staff working on the car, and they've done a lot of work. Ross Stone, the chief engineer there, and he knows precisely what he's on about. And after the end of the Australian touring car season last year, he took his car across to New Zealand, went well in Wellington, but came up with a win at Pukekohe near Auckland. So Medecky riding high at the moment, having come from the back of the field. He's in now, 8th position. There's Peter Brock out of the Sierra, the Rouse car, which ran in Caliber colours last year and won the Silverstone TT race. George Smith, one of the chief engineers of the team, just to his left.
That's not the best of starts for Pete.
Well, they've done a good job considering they put the car on the front row of the grid.
Yep.
And, you know, the car's only arrived in the country 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they've worked furiously. They've tried to set up new premises in Melbourne, and it's a horrible job trying to set up new transporters and cars and people and all sorts of ingredients. So they've flown the flag pretty high nonetheless.
Andrew Medecky on screen. John Bowe continues to lead this race from Dick Johnson. And Jim Richards driving now for Nissan, but Richards closing the gap only 1.5 seconds. John Bowe lapping in 54.2 seconds here at Amaroo Park at the moment.
The thing that they were most confident about in the Nissan team was the consistency of the car, Gary, over a period of 1 hour. They came out here a couple of weeks ago, did some tyre testing. They just weren't interested in what the best lap time was. They were interested in the most consistent, average, fast lap times. And Jim Richards is the guy who can best deliver that performance at the moment. He's only 0.8 behind race leader.
And he's sitting in behind the 2 Dick Johnson cars at this stage.
Fred's installed a new computer-controlled engine dyno in their headquarters at Dandenong. They've got more horsepower in the mid-range, considerably more horsepower in the mid-range, and a little bit more right at the top of the rev band. So with a little less weight, a little more power, 2 very good steerers in Fury and Richards, they're looking pretty good this year.
As we said before, we have timed races for the Touring Car Championship for season 89, 1-hour races, and we're just on 17 minutes now to round number 1 with John Bowe from Tasmania and 18 leading from Dick Johnson, and this man, Jimmy Richards.
And Fury, his teammate, has just got by Tony Longhurst, and he's now 4th behind Jim Richards. So 2 Shell Sierras, 2 Nissan Skylines, and then another bunch of Sierras.
Coming up on Kenny Matthews in the second of the Caltex Sierras at this stage, our 2 leaders trying to find a path through on the inside.
Yes, the Ken Matthews car painted a rather lurid
Looks smart though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think they're going to opt for that colour with the Colin Bond car too.
New Caltex livery. The elder at the moment, Bow, Johnson, Richards, then Fury, Longhurst, Bond, Madecki, Seaton, Brad Jones and Mark Gibbs, and Jim Richards is going to change that order very, very soon, I reckon.
Well, we'll see how much Dick has got left in the Sierra to wring out of it, because Jim is just getting closer all the time. In fact, last time down the hill, Dick was a little all over the place. Richards was able to close up.
Remember that Richards finished 4th in this race last year, the 70-lapper, and gave away only something in the order of 25 seconds to Dick and John. John was the winner on that occasion in the BMW. So he's got a little bit more horsepower this year with the Nissan 6-cylinder turbo, twin-cam engine, 24 valves.
Doesn't he drive this circuit well, though, Richard? And a lot of work here with the BMW team.
They've also got Yokohama rubber for 1989 to the Nissan team, having run Dunlops last year. The 2 Johnson cars on Dunlop rubber. Seems to be the most popular tyre manufacturer in the race at this stage. Brock running Bridgestone, Colin Bond running Toyo.
Bow goes through, then Dick, then Jimmy Richards. Hope you're enjoying round number 1 of the National Touring Car Championship on the Australian Television Network.
Chris Lambden in the Borough Pairs Commodore has been to the pits and rejoined the race some laps down. 8 rounds in the series this year. More prize money than ever, thanks to Shell, $275,000. The series for the drivers and for the makes, the brands of car.
Yes, each round of the championship worth $23,000 plus dollars, and then there's a mid-season prize money split up of 35 and another 40,000 at the end of the season.
Correct. Look at this. Johnson on the outside. Gentleman Jim shuts the door. Sorry, Dick. Different series this year. Now, Dick immediately pulls in behind Richards. That was a master stroke, that one, using a slower car.
Look at Freddie.
Oh,
Golly.
54.4
for John Bow on that lap, so the pace is a little slower than they probably expected. I reckon that with very hot conditions, they're chewing into rubber. And DJ coming back with a lash at Richo. I reckon George Fury would be having a bit of a smile and a smirk, because he's got nice clean air in front of his car at the moment. He's down probably the best part of about 5 seconds on this bunch, but he's not too far from it, and will wait to pick up some crumbs.
Coming downhill for the left-hander now at Honda Corner. And Mr. Versatile of motorsport, Jimmy Richards, the man who can win in touring cars and the Oscars and the NASCARs, drives the wheels off just about everything.
Just came back from Mexico last week, where he ran in the Championship of Nations event with Alan Grice at the Hermanos Rodriguez circuit in Mexico City.
That would be a question of patience. Let's check them out for you on the Caltex race score. John Bowers, your race leader, from Jimmy Richards, doing it for Nissan. Dick Johnson is 3rd, Georgie Fury 4th, and Tony Longhurst rounds out the top 5. Lap number 26 of round 1 of the Australian Touring Car Championship. And the Sierras that dominated season 88 are under a little bit of pressure from a guy by the name of Jim Richards, driving for Nissan in car number 2, the GTSR Turbo. Moving right up now onto the bumper of John Bow as they come across the line to complete lap number 27. Freddie Gibson, team manager for Nissan, would be happy at this stage the way that Gentleman Jim is going as they head up Pitcher-Pave Hill yet again. Johnson still runs in 3rd, keeping the pressure well and truly on Jimmy Richards.
24 minutes of racing, 60 minutes the duration of this first round, and each of the rounds this year. I've got the clocks on John Bow at the moment, the winner of this corresponding round in 1988.
Jim's got himself in the Sierra sandwich and he wants to get out of it. Here's John in car number 18. Richards now, see if he works to the inside as they come down on the short run to the right-hander at the late corner. Jim also trying to protect his tail. There's not much he can do, get a clean shot at Bow this time.
This is great racing, isn't it? 3 absolute, gentlemen, real talent out here. 3 guys running nose to tail. They don't come much tougher than John Bow at the wheel. He's punching really hard at the moment. And Dick Johnson now sneaks up on the inside and uses just a little bit better run onto the straight to come back and make it a shell 1-2 at the moment. And that losing momentum behind John Bow has cost Jim Richards, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here as they start to bake rubber up.
Well, in fact, if you recall 2 laps ago, Richards was sitting right on the tail of Bow, and he's dropped back off the pace. Whether or not he's got a problem, we'll have to wait and see, but...
So excited, didn't stop my stopwatch that time.
So, John Bow, Dick Johnson and Jim Richards.
Colin Bond, meanwhile, in the pits in the Caltech CXT racing Ford Sierra. I believe that, in fact, he's only just gone back out of the pits, having made a stop. Dulux Auto Colour race cam. And Bondy's back out and running. So whatever his problem was temporary. That's a real shame because he got off to a good start. So Seaton and Bagnall and Bond have had a few worries with their Sierras today. Good chance to look at the style of Colin Bond, former Australian Rally champion, winner at Bathurst, Australian Touring Car champion in 75. Had the pleasure of going with Bondy around a rally sprint course in Canberra last year. When you see how well this fella works on the dirt, you can appreciate why he's been such a champion over such a long period of time. His car control is unbelievably good.
He's coming up to put a lap on one of the Blue Haven Pools car.
And we might mention this is a new lightweight race cam unit in this car this year. Everything's been updated for 89, including the camera. Despite a lot of horsepower there, it's one of the tricks they tell me with these cars. You really have to learn to drive very carefully, particularly as you're putting power on out of slow corners. They'll bake up their rear tyres very quickly, and as soon as they overheat, instant loss of grip and then instant drama. Well, they settled back into high 53s and 54s in this race last year, and they've done exactly the same today, and conditions are definitely hotter. And look at Richards round the outside. Now, remember, he did this in a BMW to Dick Johnson and did it again 2 years ago. He's done it again. Unbelievable.
Oh, Freddie thinks,
can't believe he's lucky.
This hasn't happened for years.
There's Trevor in the background. They're thrilled. They're seeing the fruits of their hard-earned labour.
So whether Jim can pull it back up onto the tail of John Bow.
How does he do that round there? I still can't figure out how he gets away with it. You can't, it's not supposed to be in the book.
You're a teammate of his, didn't he tell you that?
I think he taught me everything but that.
Once again down into Dunlop Loop. John Bow still the race leader. Jimmy Richards comes back up into second. Dick Johnson drops back 1 to third. And again, we'll have to wait and see whether or not he can haul in John Bow. At this moment, there's a bit of trouble here going the outside route on the Toyota. Richards was going to do that himself, but the Toyota moved ground, so Jim says, I'll have a little shot down on the inside here, which he does very comfortably. Heads down to the lake corner.
That was Russell Becker, who's having his first run in the Toyota Corolla, a Formula 4 driver, an ex-kart champion, who's the first of the Toyota Star Search drivers, and I think Dick Johnson saluted him a couple of times as he went past. Toyota, as you mentioned earlier, Mike, launching a program this year to bring new talent into Australian motorsport. Top marks to them.
The Dunlop Loop, John Bow, Jimmy Richards back on the move again.
So the order now: Bow, Richards, Johnson, Fury, Tony Longhurst in 5th, Andrew Medecky 6th, Glenn Seaton 7th, then Brad Jones. Great performance to come through from the back of the field. Alan Moffat and Neville Crichton.
Oh, how close do you like it as Bow finds Jimmy Richards ready for another challenge for the lead in round 1 of the touring car titles from Amaroo Park. He gets away. Here comes Jim down the outside. On the brakes, getting ready to see if he can outsquirt him down the inside. Got plenty of power for that Sierra number 18. Coming back across the start-finishing line, John Bow defending the race lead in round number 1 from Jimmy Richards in the Nissan GTSR Turbo.
From John Bow, race leader, to George Fury in 4th, it's only 7.5 seconds as well. Gerald Kay, Jag Parts Commodore, just moving over politely. Sierra, Nissan, Sierra, Nissan, and then 6 more Sierras. Kay, Sierra, Sierra.
Here he comes again. Here's the big move. Can he pull it this time on John Bow? Bow moves him maybe just a touch off the racetrack.
JB's a wake-up.
He fell for that a couple of laps ago.
The only way that Bauer's retained this lead is by driving defensively.
Well, John's also I've been watching him. He's very quick out of that left-hander, and he tends to use a little bit more of the road there than Dick. And Richards at the moment just niggling at him. I think that he can afford to do that for a while, the way things are shaping up. There's certainly no need at this stage of the race to try and pull a desperate. If it comes good, then great, but if it doesn't, just lurk around for a while. And it depends on whose tyres are in what shape. Now, another 10 or 15 minutes from now. They're up onto the back of Mark Gibbs, who's driving the Bob Forbes Holden Commodore, driven at Bathurst last year by Kevin Bartlett and John Harvey. Support from Suttons. And Gibbsy doing the right thing. We saw him run well in that production car race. John Bow squeezes by. That's the Andrew Bagnall car stricken in the background there. Gulliver's Travels entry.
Johnny Bow, of course. Interesting young man from Tasmania, 34 years of age, from Devonport. Winner of the 84 and 85 Gold Star Series. Second last year in the Touring Car Championship. Second in the Tooheys 1000 in 88. And was the winner of this race, this round, last year at Amaroo Park.
And just recorded a 54.9 on that last lap. So, if anything, they're a tad slower than they were last year. There's a couple of variable factors, as I mentioned earlier. There's no rubber on the circuit after getting a real deluge yesterday, plus it's the first meeting of the year here, and that should always be taken into account. The track temperature's pretty high, but also the fuels have changed this year, or the fuel has changed this year. And everybody running the same fuel in 1989, one specification for all, and a number of the teams have had to reprogram for that, and that's also one of the slight variables compared to last year. I think it was a sensible move on the part of CAMS and the series sponsors Shell to do that, and it took the grumbles and groans away regarding fuel. Coming up onto the back of Neville Crichton, the second Benson and Hedges Ford Sierra. Neville making a welcome return to full-time touring car racing. In 1989, he was with Tony Longhurst in the JBS team a couple of years back in the BMW 635, and he's dabbled with his toes in the water occasionally. He's been very busy with his business at Tico, where they handle Suzuki's, and they've been bringing Volkswagen back into Australia and up to the fore, and Audi. So Neville's been off playing businessman games.
Here we go again. Down the outside. Now feint a pass and make sure you're in tight on the inside on the exit.
Well, some traffic coming into play now.
Jim had just loved this.
Well, John's in the worst spot. He's sort of driving by the rear mirror as well as looking out the front. He's got to try and cover every move from Jim. And Jim's worry, I guess, when he's in the hole in the air punched by John Bow's car is not to see the gauges go off the clock in car number 2.
They're coming up to put a lap on Neville Crichton in the B&H Sierra, the second of the yellow Sierras.
And Neville's done the right thing, given everybody plenty of space to do business. Always gentle at the wheel. There's no argument with the steering wheel for Jim Richards. Huge crowd enjoying plenty of sunshine today, which is a bonus for Sydney after the last few weeks.
I feel they're also enjoying a race.
Yeah, it's a ripper. As Richards again out wide, John Bow just nips up that front left, which gets a little bit light as he begins to turn the car in. And Dick Johnson, if anything, just edging a bit closer again as a result of all that. And George Fury, as I predicted a bit earlier, enjoying something of a tow along out of all this. He is now only 4.7 seconds. The last time I measured it was 7.5.
And 9 cars on the lead lap.
Well, while Bow drives defensively and keeps Richards behind him, Johnson watches all, and of course Fury, as you say, is catching up. Won't be long before Johnson will have his mirrors full of another Nissan.
Won't that be a scrap?
Having a lap put on him by both John Bow and Jimmy Richards.
Pretty soon you'll start seeing glimpses of George in the background, who's just gone past Mark Gibbs. They're coming up now to Ken Matthews in the second Caltech CXT Racing Ford Sierra.
So it's got some grunt in it, that Nissan. He just gave him about 3 car lengths and pulled him in before the corner.
He's also very strong under brakes. Great feel for the motor car has Jim Richards, 1985 and 87 Australian Touring Car Champion, the winner of the AMSCAR series here, Richards, so he knows his stuff around Amaroo Park. And for so many years, we've become used to watching Jim rattling around in BMW products very successfully. It came as something of a surprise to many that he joined Nissan this year. He evaluated the car, had a deep and meaningful with Fred and the team, and they reckoned that they were on a good thing for 89.
It obviously handles superbly. In fact, I go so far as to say that around here, it appears to handle better than the Sierra. But then again, that just might be Gentleman Jim's driving style.
The way the car appeared to the layman last year, it seemed to buck and jump about. It looked to leap about on the road, but it's not apparent, certainly on this circuit, is it?
Well, that wasn't something that was apparent with the car that Alan Grice and Win Percy ran in Europe. Now, that car also ran on Yokohama tyres, I should add, which this car is now this year. And that may, of course, have a little to do with it. But Freddie Gibson, I know, has taken a little interest in what happened with the European car, and I would guess some of its better points perhaps have been transferred to the Australian car. I
know one fellow who will be very twitchy at the moment watching from the wrong side of the barrier, and that's Mark Scape, who's the third member of the Nissan team in 89. And I reckon he'd be itching to get out amongst it. He put in a very good showing last year in the final round of the Shell Series at Oran Park. Had a good scrap with Jim Richards. So Mark can look forward to getting into a pretty competitive car later in the year. I think we'll see him at some of the AMSCAR races, and we'll certainly see him in the longer distance stuff later in the year.
Come down to Honda corner yet again. So the saga continues. John Bauer in car number 18. Let's check out the Caltex race score. Bauer still leads from Jimmy Richards. Dick Johnson is back there in third. Closing is Georgie Fury, and rounding out the 5, Tony Longhurst. Round 1 of the Australian Touring Car Championship, and this fascinating scrap continues between John Bauer, Jimmy Richards, and a closing Dick Johnson in car number 17. 40 minutes have gone of the 1-hour race, 20 still remain, obviously, and Jimmy Richards falling back just into the clutches of Dick Johnson in the last lap of this event. Dick very keen to get past.
He sort of lost momentum a couple of laps ago in the break, and tried to get round the outside of John Bauer down at the stop corner, got squeezed out up onto the ripple strip and just lost contact slightly with JB, and that's allowed Dick to get a little bit closer, and he's just niggling him at the moment.
We'll keep mentioning Georgie Fury, though. I should tell you that gap down is now down to under 4 seconds between Johnson and Fury.
And the last time over the top of the hill, Jim sort of fishtailed a bit over there, and when he tried to go through the left-hander at Honda, he was understeering wide of the apex, and I think he's just got to get back in the groove again and take the pressure off himself with Dick so close.
Well, he's made a number of moves around the outside of John Bauer in this corner, as we've seen. As you just mentioned, the last time there, he got the good old chop, wound up on the ripple strip.
See, look at the gap that John's got now over Richards. It's 2.4 seconds. That's only out of the last couple of laps.
The gap between third and fourth, though, now. Johnson's going to have his mirrors full any minute now. George Fury.
There's Fury. Now, closing. And he's been doing a little easier than Jim.
Look at the top 10 on lap 46 of the 1-hour race. Bauer, Richards, Johnson, then Georgie Fury 4th, Tony Longhurst 5th, Andrew Madecki in 6th, Glenn Seaton in 7th, Brad Jones in 8th, in the second mobile car, Alan Moffat in the ANZ Ford Sierra 9th, and Mark Gibbs in Commodore in 10th. George Fury is running in a rebuilt and revised car that did exist last year, whereas Richo's car is new. George is 44 years of age and a rally champion of years gone by. A runner-up in the Australian Touring Car Championship on a couple of occasions. He's won the Sandown 500, but never the big one at Bathurst, and that's what he's been working towards. And he finished third in this race last year when they were just unveiling this car to the world. And hasn't it come a long way in a little less than 12 months? I think everybody tends to overlook development in racing cars. I think often there's the expectation that you plonk them on the track and they go and blow everybody's door handles off because they've got a nice coat of Dulux and a cut and polish, but it takes time and effort, money, all sorts of things to get them up, and Fred and the team were late in their program last year and it didn't help their cause, and they've had to work pretty solidly for 12 months to get them mobile. Now it's working, no question.
Here goes Georgie Fury on the run down to the late corner. He's after Dick Johnson. Lap still on his side. Now we take our ICI Dulux Auto Colour race cam with Glenn Seaton debuting today in the Peter Jackson Ford Sierra.
We'll be profiling Glenn Seaton in next weekend's telecast, round 2 of the series from Symonds Plains and his new operation in Melbourne. He said to me when I was down there last week that he was happy just to get about for a while and see what it was all like, and then after 2 or 3 rounds, go like hell was the quote.
Well, he was passed by Andrew Madecki early in the race and has just worked his way back past Andrew, so that takes him up to 6th for the PJ Sierra team, so he's doing very nicely.
Immaculately turned out car, and it picked up the award today for the best presented car. And when you look inside at the sort of engineering in the car, the welding, the way it's been painted, every little conceivable part on the car, Richard, is absolutely gorgeous. I was frankly surprised because everybody thought that when Glenn left Nissan last year that it may have been a dodgy move. Whoops! And Dick Johnson to the pits.
So Johnson's gone into the pits, and that was a quick pit stop. I hope he made it through the entrance because
they could be wearing him in the press room. I think he went in there at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure if that's the cameraman running in front of it. No, there he is, trying to get up.
Tyres are dead, are they?
Yep.
Yeah, he's in for rubber. Well, there you go. Left rear, that's the working tyre in this race. He must have blistered one, or good stop, well drilled.
Yes,
but that's cost him plenty of time.
Yes, it was. Now,
you're giving a half a lap away to his teammate John Bowe, and he's in 7th position. Nissan 2 and 3, they're lurking, aren't they?
Sure are. And Bowe, little touch sideways, coming out of the late corner that time. Comes up inside the little Corolla.
The point that I was going to make about Glenn Seaton was that maybe he was sort of plunging into the unknown a bit with his own team and Father Barry, but they've set up a glorious workshop in Melbourne. New facilities, milling equipment and all sorts of high-tech gear to make sure that they're on the pace. Good transport. The facilities at their fingertips are just right at the moment. I think that car will work up to full competitive speed within a couple of races.
Another little Toyota guys bouncing off the ripple strip as Jimmy Richards tries to close that gap on John Bowe. Bowe, incidentally, about to put a lap, I believe, on Alan Moffat in the ANZ Sierra as they go down to the late corner. Alan qualified in 8th spot here today. So he's had a lap put in by Bowe. There's Glenn Seaton now as we take the Dulux Auto Colour race cam, working his way past Tony Longhurst. So Glenn starting to...
was it Longhurst or Crichton?
Could have been Crichton.
We'll have a look. No, it was Longhurst. So spot on.
So he's coming back through the pack. Car running strongly at the finish of today's race. So
well, life got a bit ugly for him coming out of this corner very early in the race when he and Bondi had a little touch. He's regained his momentum. Dick Johnson, incidentally, back up to 5th place, revitalised with some rubber on that car.
Johnson, in fact, is 6th at the moment. He'll be 5th if he should get past Longhurst ahead of him.
Glenn Seaton dives into the right-hander at Dunlop Loop. .47 minutes of 60 into round 1 of the Shell National Touring Car Championship from Sydney's Amaroo Park Raceway. As we mentioned, round 2 takes place at Symonds Plains in Launceston in Tasmania next weekend. We'll be there, and so too will 20,000 screaming Tasmanian supporters after John Bowe. In the meantime, Johnson in car number 17 gets around the outside of Longhurst, Benson and Hedges Sierra.
Now he's 5th.
5th on the road at the moment. Fresh set of tyres. And he really has the job ahead of him, but at the same time he's closing very, very quickly on a group of cars, including Seaton. So we'll see whether or not Dick can to make up the ground and maybe a top 3 finish here today.
We were talking about Toyota before. Later in the year we're going to see John Smith and an all-new Toyota team having a go in the open class with the Group A touring car version of the Toyota Supra Turbo. We saw it in production car form earlier today, and that'll add some more spice to the series. I think the entry list for this meeting totaled 38 for the touring car event. It's quite remarkable, and reflecting the health of the game at the moment.
And we take the race cam again in Glenn Seaton's car, the Dulux Auto Color camera, and he's coming up on the Caltex Sierra. Waves, and then we give you the second version.
Bondi's having a chat
with Colin Bond. You've got to be very careful with Bondi because he talks to himself all the way through the race.
He says, come on, come on, come on.
Oh, and there's Johnson just straight past. So Johnson with a fresh set of tyres is just zooming back through the field.
And that move sees him up to 4th.
Yeah, I might put the clock on Dick next lap round and see just how quickly he's going. The rear of his car looks pretty stable there, but on the left-hander, it's likely to be, because that's the side of the car that works the least on this track, and the rubber's likely to be in a better state.
They come along the short straight. Seaton going through, having been passed there by Dickie Johnson in car number 17. And he also separated Colin Bond.
Well, I've got the stopwatch on Dick Johnson at the moment.
Bond drops down into Dunlop Loop. Race lead still the same. John Bowe in car number 18 for the Shell team, leading the race.
Bondi's in position 11, by the way.
Second, of course, is Jimmy Richards. Colin Bond, car number 4, the Caltex car. You're having a good time out there, Cole. Plenty of noise. Can you hear us, Colin? He said he wouldn't talk. I think he's right.
Can't really hear you, Mike, if you're trying to get through.
Can you hear?
It's out here today.
Can you hear us, Cole? We won't worry for the moment. We'll talk to Colin Bond a little later. I think he's got his hands full at the moment.
Well, he's in the second chorus.
Yes. Yes, you're not quite...
A lot of noise coming back through the exhaust. So I really can't hear you. I think Glenn and I are in about... Actually, the rear tyres just refused to stick. We're battling on because we presume this race is going to do about 65 laps.
All right, well, you heard it from Cole.
Well, he's fighting the thing that I think everybody's battling with at the moment, and that's a desperate lack of grip. Very hot out there at the moment, and on a notoriously hard-on tyres circuit.
Let's recap them for you on the Caltex race score. John Bowe is the race leader. Jimmy Richards runs in second. George Fury is third. Dickie Johnson back now to fourth, and Glenn Seaton is fifth. Back at Amaroo Park Raceway, John Bowe continues to lead in car number 18 with about 5 minutes 50 seconds of racing still left in the first 1 hour time race of the Championship Series for 89. They come down the back straight.
I think, if anything, John Bowe's put plenty of distance into Jim Richards in the last 2 laps. And Bowe, that time, just running very, very conservatively through the loop. I think everybody's staggering on their rubber. Yeah, I think what will be going through everyone's mind at the moment is just, can I get the thing home without getting a puncture or the tyre just completely disintegrating? Certainly Jim Richards has fallen away from the back of John Bowe. He's holding station at the moment with his teammate George Fury. The order: Bowe, Richards, Fury, Dick Johnson, Glenn Seaton 5th, Tony Longhurst 6th, Brad Jones 7th, Alan Moffat 8th, Andrew Madecki 9th, and Mark Gibbs is 10th.
Well, Richards has been losing about not far off a second a lap to Bowe over the last 2 or 3 laps. So
yeah, and Dick with his new left rear has been about a second lap faster than John Bowe. He's been in and around the 53s, and John is at the high end of the 54s, even in creeping into the 55s in some of these late laps now. So the pace has fallen well away.
Through the just left-hander at Honda. Bow stretches out, running down to the lake.
Brad Jones, who's 7th, has got a couple of 100 metres on John Bow at the moment, and I think he'll survive without being lapped. Everybody else beyond that's been lapped at least once.
But a very enterprising start for the Nissan team.
Yeah, some encouraging pointers there, really. The strengths in the day, obviously the two Nissans. We can look forward to strong stuff from them this year. Glenn Seaton, great performance from him. Brand new car. And also excellent performance from Brad Jones. Interesting qualifying performance, I should say, from Peter Brock. And I thought that perhaps Tony Longhurst would be able to niggle the Shell cars a little bit more today. Maybe they didn't quite get onto the right rubber, or... But by gee, predicting who's going to be the hero of the Touring Car Series this year is going to be an awfully tough task.
Bow once again across the start-finishing line, holding about that same gap over Jimmy Richards. Then a similar gap back to George Fury in car number 3. Johnson closing quickly in 4th place, but I don't think we'll have the number of laps required to, or the time, more importantly, to be able to haul in the two Nissans.
Oh, and Brad Jones has just had a big lose going through the loop. There he is. I said before he wasn't going to be lapped. Whoops. Now he is. He's come out in front of George Fury.
And that would be a good example of what we were just saying about the tyres going up, I think.
Yeah, just such a delicate balance trying to keep things on the island in the closing stages.
We estimate we've got only a couple of minutes left in this race, so Bow will lead them once again up Bitchapave Hill. Richards still running in 2nd and 3rd spot, held by George Fury. Anything more than another lap and a bit, and I tell you what, I think Johnson will be right on Fury's tail. Through the loop, the exit there, and the run down now to Mazda Corner. He's driven superbly here today, John Bow. Just a beautiful start off the 2nd line.
He's an ace. He's twice Australian driving champion. He was brilliant in open wheelers. We saw him rubbing shoulders with the very best in the world when the Formula Mondial cars encouraged some of the Formula 1 drivers to come out and drive them.
Coming on the run out of Lake Corner now. Time just about out. Car number 18, John Bow, coming to the start-finishing line. And I would think this will be pretty close to the last lap.
They haven't been given a board yet. And until they're given the board. And I reckon that there'll be a lot of relief inside John Bow's helmet when he sees that board.
Well, if we do have another 1.5 laps left, I tell you it's going to be a close finish for 3rd place between Georgie Fury. I'd expect to see John Bow this time around, car number 18, on the run down to the right-hander. Great start for John. Alan Moffat has stayed close to him since had a lap put on him, and in fact is trying to get that lap back as they come up to the start finishing straight again, and the checkered flag will come out, and Bow takes round number 1 today at Sydney's Amaroo Park Raceway. But a sensational finish for 2nd and 3rd going to the Nissan team of Jimmy Richards in car number 2 and George Fury in car number 3. And Dick Johnson, the defending champion, finishes back in 4th place. 1 hour almost on the knocker for John Bow in car number 18. The young driver from Devonport. Let's check them again for you on the Caltex race score. John Bow is the winner of round number 1. Jim Richards for Nissan runs 2nd. Fury for Nissan is 3rd. Dick Johnson is 4th. And rounding out the 5, Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Sierra.